Hi, I'm Shelley Young, owner of the Chopping Block, and today I'm going to teach you how to make our famous apple pie. At least it's famous around these parts. This is the recipe that I made in the very first class that we ever taught at the Chopping Block. It was a hit then, we've been making it ever since, so it's a very special recipe to me. The secret to it, I think, in part, is that it is made with Granny Smith apples. You can certainly use other kinds of apples in the apple pie, but for all year round, Granny Smith apples are tart and they're firm all year round. A lot of the apples that you see otherwise can be softer and sweeter. They break down, the pie can get mushy. So that's why I like the Granny Smith apples. If you use a really fresh apple and it's sweet and you like it like that, great. You might just want to reduce the sugar. This pie is an apple pie, so apple comes first. There's very little sugar, very little seasonings. It's very, very simple. These apples did not come from a farmer's market. As you can see, they got a nice little sticker on them. I don't even mess with taking the stickers off. I'll let the peeler do that for me. But you want to have a nice sharp peeler. If you're making a lot of pie, which we do around here, we use our handy dandy apple peeler, and that's very quick and efficient. How this works is this has a core attachment also, which we remove, because if you peel and core, it slices the apple very, very thin, which isn't what we want for our pie. But all we do is do like this. Isn't that easy? People love this. You can use this for potatoes too. You pull that off, push this little lever, slide it back. This peeler is a Rosla peeler, and it is one of my very favorite tools. It's incredibly sharp, but it works like a paring knife. It goes towards you. And I really love this one. So if you don't have one of these, this is a great alternative, or just use your regular peeler or a paring knife. These are sharp enough to peel a pumpkin with. This recipe has 3 pounds of apples. That will vary in quantity of apples. Usually it's around 7 or 8. This is 7 today. I prefer them a little bit smaller, but these will be just fine. How I do the apples is very specific. I cut the sides off like this. I don't take the core out, I just cut the flesh off of the core. I find that much easier. Why I like a little bit smaller apple is because these little ends that I cut off, this is how thick I'm going to leave the apples, and I like it just a smidge thinner than that, but this is fine. We use really thickly sliced apples in the pie, and I do that because it creates more of an aerated texture in the pie. When you slice the apples very, very thinly, to me it creates a more compact pie. These apples also create an incredible mounded effect in the pie, and a real spectacular sight. That's half of the deliciousness of this pie. I mean, I gotta tell you, it's just how it looks. 1/3 cup of flour, 1 cup of sugar. You do want to taste these apples. Just confirm they're not so tart off the charts that you might want to increase that. But that rarely happens. 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. This has very little cinnamon. If you insist on adding more, go ahead, but I really prefer just 1 teaspoon so the apples are at the forefront. Just a little pinch of salt. That's our filling. I'm going to stir this up, set it aside while I roll my crusts so I can assemble the pies. Always make the filling first, and it's ready, and the pie crust doesn't get too warm. So I've got my chilled pie crust here. We do have another video. Look for that on how we made this pie crust. But what I want to really show you, cold, cold, cold. That is the trick to pie crust. A little bit cold, it's just a lot harder to roll. It gets sticky. But don't be tempted to take this cold dough out and then let it get a little bit warm, because then it just gets sticky that way. So what we do, which is a whole lot of fun, is we take our rolling pin and we beat the heck out of this. What it does is it makes the dough more pliable and warms it slightly so it's rollable. So we just go around like this, beat it, and rotate it so it kind of stays in a circle. All right, so this is way more pliable than where we started. I've got a cutting board here. You don't need to use a cutting board. I actually like wood to roll on though, because it grabs the dough better. Flour on the board. Keep it well floured, but lightly floured. You don't want the dough to stick. It won't stick too bad though, because this is really cold. Flour that. Now I'm going to roll this one way, opposite way. If you get a crack, just do that. I keep, especially in the beginning, I keep flouring, moving it around. I'm doing this to make sure it's not sticking. Again, I have a crack, no problem. I'll just fix it. This is a very forgiving dough. So I don't roll the pie dough to the thickness, I roll it to the size of the pan. So what I want to do is put my pan over the top of the pie dough. I want to make sure that when I put it in, that the pie dough will reach at least the top of this, which is about where we are. I like these rolling pins that don't roll, because I can move my dough around with them. If you take the rolling pin and have it in the middle of the dough, you can see that you're in the middle. Then take the rolling pin and set it in the middle of the pan. It helps to center it a little bit more. Don't push it really, just kind of let it drop down. Give it a little assistance. Now I'm going to roll the top. Use the same method. Rolled my top crust. What I want to do now is put a little vent in it. Just a couple of slits, however you want to do that. And it's time to put the pie together. So what I'm going to do is have my top ready to go here. My pie dish over. Oh my gosh, I'm going to fit all of these apples in here. Can you believe it? If you've got any pokey apples like this, I like to just move them around a little bit so they don't poke a big hole through the crust. I also bring the apples in a little bit from the edge so it's easier to create the border. I've got about 2 tablespoons of diced unsalted butter. What this is going to do is melt inside here and enrich in the filling. Now, just do the same thing. Put my top on there. And move that around a little. Got it on there a little crooked. And what I do is basically tuck it in. Tuck those apples in. And then I like to do a rope edge. This is a very rustic pie and I like the way that looks. And I just twist it around. Like so. Doesn't really need to be that fancy. And you know what's neat about this particular edge too is that it, or this particular pan, excuse me, is that it doesn't boil over so much because the pan holds on to the extra. I'm going to finish the top of this pie with heavy cream. I use heavy cream because I serve this pie with fresh homemade whipped cream, so I always have heavy cream around. You don't need very much. You don't want to use an egg white or eggs because that creates kind of a hard, that's more for like Danishes. Pie I think is better with milk or cream. Use milk if you don't have any cream. And then we're going to sprinkle sugar on it. Pop it in the oven at 350 for about an hour to hour and 15 minutes. I'll show you what that looks like when it's done. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is this pan. You might have noticed I'm baking this in a cast iron pan. We use cast iron or earthenware for baking pies. It's a great vehicle for baking because these edges aren't going to burn and the bottom is going to be crunchy and crispy, which with a glass dish in particularly, that doesn't happen. You have all kinds of issues with the edges burning and the bottom being soggy. It's simply the pan. Time to check the pie. It's been about an hour and 15 minutes. My last look at this was, here, let me pull this all the way out here like that. Oh, so you can take a peek at it. What I see here is we got a lot of bubbles, golden brown, everybody knows that. But the trick to the pie is that the inside, in the middle, is hot. Sometimes you see bubbling, sometimes I don't. But what I'll look for is I'll touch that, you can use a knife, put that in there, make sure it's piping hot in the center. Once it's hot in the center, then you know that it's come to a boil. And that is really a mistake that people make a lot, because if the center isn't come to a boil, the pie won't be thick. Because flour has to come to a boil before it thickens. So I do find sometimes people add a lot of extra starch because they have runny pies. And they have runny pies because they're under baking them. But this one's done. So I made a little fresh whipped cream. I just garnished a pie with that. It's a perfect complement to the famous chopping block apple pie.